Hi, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make this interactive animated bento card animation using Figma and LottieFiles. I'm sure you've seen these animations on websites and in apps, and you often wondered how they were made. I'm going to be spilling the bean on the entire design process of this animation today, from the design in Figma to animation in Lottie Creator, then adding interactivity to the animation using the LottieFiles State Machines AI. These animations are not only beautiful, they also help individuals and companies explain the concept behind the services they offer or what their app is all about to their target audience. So you want to watch this video to the end because it promises to be value packed. So this is what we'll be recreating in this video, a fully interactive bento card animation. So you have this send button pulse here that lets the user know that this is an interactive element. And once you click on the send button, it sends messages to all of the social media platforms, which goes in tandem with the title and the subtitle of this bento card animation. And this is also a dynamic bento card animation because you can easily change the title and the subtitle of the bento card animation. I'm using something called motion tokens to make the animation dynamic. I'll give more details on that when we get into the animation phase, but let me show you what that can do. So for the title, you can change this at will. For example, I can change this from post across multiple platforms. I can come here and say send so I can do that. I can change the font size. For example, I can change this to 40. So this is too big. Change this to 40. Change this to, let's say, 60. Whatever you like. Just going to bring this back to 52. I can change the font family. For the subtitle, I can do the same thing. So this is what an interactive and dynamic animation looks like using LottieFiles. So this is what we'll be recreating. And changing all of those stuff does not affect the animation in any way. It is still fully interactive. You can still click on this to activate the animation and all of those things. So let's just get into Figma and recreate this design, and then we'll animate and do the interactivity. So I'm in Figma now, and this is the original design that I did. We are going to recreate this from scratch. I'm going to show you how to create every element here from scratch. So let's just get started. We are going to need a frame. This is a 1080 by 1080 frame. So I'm just going to click the shortcut F to bring out my frame. And then I'm going to change the dimensions to 1080 by 1080. And then I'm going to rename this bento card animation. I like to name all my layers, all my frames. Just do a little bit of organization for everything I'm doing, whether I'm animating or designing. It's really good to be organized. Name your layers properly, put them in a functional hierarchy. This will save you a lot of time and protect your sanity while you develop your animation. So the next thing we need to do here is just to create a rectangle. It is worthy of note that I'm designing for animation. So most of my animation principles, the type of layers I use, will be based on compatibility with the .lottie format, which our animation will be. So for example, for this background, I'm going to be using a rectangle. If you are doing typical design for UI, you might use a frame, but I prefer to just use simple shapes, very simple shapes, simple designs, so that my design will be compatible with the animation format, the .lottie format. You will understand that better when we get to the animation stage. So for now, I'm just going to create a rectangle for our background. For colors that I'll be using in this particular animation, I already have them defined in the style section. So I have three main colors that I'll be using. These are brand colors. If you want to use colors that are different from mine, you are free to do that. But these are the colors I'll be using: a dark green, a light green, and I might use this orange accent. But in this original design, I didn't use that, so we might not use that. So to create our rectangle for our background, I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut R. Then I'm going to create my rectangle. And I'm going to give it a few color of my green, the dark green. So the next thing I want to do is to attack this text immediately. You can add the text by using your keyboard shortcut T and then click on this. So I'm going to click on that, change the font type to Poppins. I like poppins a lot. I'm going to change it to semi-bold. I'm going to duplicate this, bring this down. I'm just going to copy the text content here. Put the same thing here. And I'm going to select the two layers and make them auto layout, so I can easily adjust them, and I can put them in a group, and I'm going to call this group texts. So that's the text done. The next thing I want to do is attack the background. If you look here, we have a grid background here, and then the grid background gradually fades out. So how do we do that? We are not going to be creating the grid from scratch. There's this amazing pack by a designer called Abdul Salam. So he has this grid pack of different kind of grids, I think 12 in total. And I'm using this particular one, Grid Restart. So I'm going to leave a link to this particular pack in the description or comments of this video. But for now, I'm going to leave a link to this particular design to this one we are doing in the description. So I'm just going to copy the grid that I already have here. I'm going to show you how to do this fade out effect in Figma and then in Lottie Creator later when we are animating. So I'm just going to find the grid in this place. This is it. I'm going to copy it and then come to this frame and paste it in this frame. So this is the grid already imported. So the next thing I want to do is, as you can see, this is like, its opacity is 25%, so it's not that visible, but we still need it to fade out. We have it in full length here. So how do we do that? We do that by creating a rectangle. I'm just going to create a rectangle that is approximately, I want to create it in the frame, not, I want to create a rectangle that is, the reason why this is happening is because the rectangle I'm trying to create is coming inside the grid, what's it called, frame. So, and this is an auto layout, so it's trying to put everything together, and that's not what I want. I'm just going to cancel out. I'm going to lock this grid frame so that does not happen. Then I can freely create my rectangle now. I'm using the keyboard shortcut R to go to the rectangle too. So now I can freely create my rectangle without the grid interfering with it. So I'm going to create one that is approximately the size of the grid. And the next thing I want to do is give this particular rectangle a grid fill. So I'm going to click on fill, go to a gradient fill. I'm going to make it a radial gradient fill. So we have this particular gradient now. So the next thing I want to do is change the opacity of this second node, this second color node on the radial fill, the radial gradient. I'm going to change this to 0 so that the grid gradually fades out. So in the middle, it has 100% opacity. That means it is fully opaque, and as it approaches the end of the radial gradient, it has 0% opacity. That means it is fully transparent. So once I've created that rectangle, what I can now do is use this rectangle as a mask for this grid. So how do we do that? I'm going to bring the rectangle below the grid in the frame. Then I'm going to click on both the rectangle. I'm going to highlight both of them. Then I'm going to right click and then click on use as mask. So that is how we create this fading out effect for the grid. So what we are basically doing is using this rectangle to define the transparency value of the grid. So wherever the rectangle is transparent, the grid will be transparent in those areas too. Wherever it is opaque, that means it is visible, the grid will be visible in that particular place too. So let me dial back a couple of steps so we can really understand this concept, because we are going to be using the same concept in Lottie Creator when we are animating. So this is our rectangle. Let's hide this grid from view. As you can see, because we are using a radial fill, and we defined that this is the first node here. This one, it is at 100% opacity. That means it is fully opaque, it is fully visible. But the second node here is fully transparent because we reduce its opacity value to 0. So we have this gradual fade out that happens in the middle of the rectangle. The radial gradient is fully opaque. That means the rectangle is fully opaque, it is fully visible. But as it moves out to the second point, the second node, it is transparent because we have defined its value to be transparent. So what we now want to do is just to use this rectangle to define the visibility value of the grid. So we can have something like this that is fully opaque in the middle, but as it stretches out, it becomes transparent. So I'm going to highlight the two again. The grid, when you want to use something as a mask, in Figma at least, you have to make sure what you are using as a mask, which is our rectangle in this case, is beneath the layer of what you want to be masked. For example, this is our rectangle. This is what we'll be using as a mask, and our grid is what we want to mask out. So we are going to leave the grid at the top of the rectangle. Then we are going to highlight the two, select the two, right click and click on use as mask. Then we are going to have that gradual fade out effect for the grid. So that's that for that, and we can name this grid mask. So I like to name my layers as I go, so I'm not confused, and I'm going to name this the rectangle mask, just so I know which layer is which, and that is that for that. So the next thing we need to do here is, I'll say, let's create our what's it called, our send button. And for this, we are going to use a couple of rectangle layers and an icon. So let's create our a couple of circle layers. So let's create our first circle layer by using the keyboard shortcut. So I use keyboard shortcuts a lot, and we are going to be creating a circle and an ellipse by clicking on the keyboard shortcut O. Then I'm going to let me lock this grid layer so it does not interfere with whatever we are building. So once we are done, I'm going to click on O again, then draw out our ellipse while holding Alt and Shift to draw from the middle, to lock the proportions on the X and Y axis and draw from the middle. If I don't do that, I'm just going to be drawing from one angle, and then the X and Y value are not going to be constrained. But if I hold down Alt and Shift while doing that, I'm able to draw a perfect ellipse, a perfect circle, and I'm going to draw at least to that size, and I'm going to release. And I'm going to align this to the center, which is already aligned. That's superb. I'm going to bring this down a notch, and I'm going to reduce its size a bit. Then I'm going to give it the color, a few color of our green. Then if you notice from this particular, if you notice from this design, we have two rays of light actually coming from the top right angle, which is influencing the icons all over the place. So adding rays of light to your designs gives them dimension and depth, so they look less flat. If I turn off the rays of light in this particular design, you see how it looks. It looks flat. Let me turn them off one by one. So for the first, look, see how flat it looks. But if I turn on the first ray of light, we have this broad ray of light, and it is shining on the layers. Then we have the second one, which is, so this is the first ray, and this is the second one, which is more streamlined, and this is giving that kind of effect that this is a 3D layer. it gives that subtle 3D layer to the designs and give them depth and make them more pleasing to look like. If I turn off both rays, they look flat, they look 3D. Although the icons themselves, they already have lights reflected. The way I've designed them, they seem to have lights reflected. But that is considering the fact that I was going to add the rays of light from this particular angle. So it makes sense to have them rays of light on them too. So when we are doing our designs, we have to put that into considerations. If you are going to be having, if you want that depth to be in your design, you have to design your icons, you have to design your elements in the scene to have that particular ray of light, to have the shine of that particular ray of light. So how do we do that for the icons? So for instance, this particular green layer now, we can now add another fill that we have that particular ray of light that is coming from this side. So how do we do that? I'm going to add another fill here, and it's going to be a gradient fill. And for the first color, I want it to be white. So the second color, it doesn't matter because I'm going to make this transparent. Then I'm going to move the ray of light over to this side. Then I'm going to increase the opacity a bit to, let's say, 40%. And as you can see, it already has that ray of light. If you look closely, it's like something is shining from this particular side. So that just makes the ellipse pop. It makes it look kind of 3D instead of being a flat 2D image. So if I turn this off, it's just a flat circle, a flat ellipse shape. But if I turn it back on, it gives it that ray of light to make it seem like it's a 3D layer and it has light reflecting on it. So that's that for that particular icon. So we need to create a second one, which is going to be this light gray circle. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to use Alt, or I can just click on this and just click on Ctrl D to duplicate it. Then I'm going to reduce it in size. That I'm going to give it a few color of light gray. I don't want it to be totally white. I want it to be that gray. Then I'm going to remove the light ray that we added. For this, I want it to be more of this particular stroke, this half stroke that gives it that pop too. So I don't want it to be just light ray. I want it to be this stroke. So how do you achieve that effect? You can add a stroke to this particular ellipse, this particular circle. I'm going to make it a tad darker gray. Then I'm going to add a white stroke to it. It's going to be white. I'm going to increase it to, let's say, let's do 2. Then we are going to make it a linear stroke. And for the second node, we are going to make it 0. And considering the fact that our ray of light will be coming from this direction, the top right direction, it doesn't make sense that our reflection is coming from the top here. So we are going to change the angle to match where our ray of light will be coming. And that's how you achieve this kind of effect of ray of light shining on this second ellipse. So I think it will make more sense to just do our ray of light now. So let's get on with that. Before we move forward, let's just design our ray of light. So that is very simple. You can just pick up your pen tool, which is P, and then you draw any shape. So for we have, like I said, we have 2 rays of light here. We have a very broad one, and we have another second ray of light that is more directional. It's smaller, but it has a brighter opacity than the broad ray of light. So let's do that for this. I'm going to draw a somewhat large shape, but I don't want it to get to the text. Then I'm going to change the stroke to fill by using the keyboard shortcut Shift X. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to make it a white fill instead of black. Then from here I can add the layer blur effect. I'm going to add the layer blur effect. I'm going to blur it a lot. Then I'm going to reduce its opacity like a lot. And at any time you want to change this, you can just click on it. Click on enter to edit the nodes, and you can change its shape. You can, maybe you don't like where it's coming from, how wide it is, you can do that. And once you're done, click on enter again, and then that's that. So that's our first ray of light, and this is it. I'm going to move it into the frame so we know what we are working with. And as you can see, this gives the design a lot of depth. It has moved from a flat design to this kind of 3D looking design. And if I turn this off, you see how flat it looks. If I turn this on, it gives it depth, it gives it meaning, it gives it definition. So I'm going to quickly name this to Ray Large. I'm going to lock it. Then I'm going to do a second ray of light that will be smaller. I mean, it will be smaller inside, but the opacity will be bigger than this big ray of light. So how do I do that? I'm going to go back to my pen tool again, and I'm going to draw that tiny rectangle just like this. Use Shift X again to change this into a fill instead of a stroke. I'm going to make it white. Click on enter to exit the edit tool, and then I'm going to add the layer blur effect to this too. So that's that. Then I'm going to reduce its opacity to something around 16. I think that looks nice. And then this is it here. I'm going to bring it into the frame, and I'm going to name it Ray Tiny. Just for now, I'm just going to give it that, and let's see how they work up. So this is the first ray, and this is the second ray. So they are just giving definition to the design. So that's that. I'm going to group these two, Control or G to put them into a frame, and I'm going to call the frame rays. Then I'm going to lock it so that I'm not able to mess with it. I'm not able to change anything on it. So let's see what that looks like. So this is without the rays, and this is with the rays. Without the rays, with the rays. So let's just continue with our design at this point. Oh, we need to add the send icon to our big send button. So for that, I'm going to using the plugin Iconify. I'm not going to be creating this from scratch. I'm going to use Iconify to just get the send icon. So how do you do that? Click on Ctrl K to bring up the plugin section. I'm going to go to plugin and widget section here. I already searched for these, so that's why you see all of these plugins. These are the plugins I've used recently. That's why you see them here. But if you don't see them, you can just search for Iconify, and this is it right here. Just click on it and then search for whatever you want. So I'm just going to search for send, and I'm going to look for a send icon that I like. Anyone you like, just click on it. I think I like this. Click on import as a frame. This is it right here, and then you can increase this in size. Just reduce it in relation to our send button, and then you can change the color. You can change this to I think we already have it as black too. Yeah. It's not black. I think I used, yeah, so it's more of this dark blue background color rather than black. So if you don't like the icon, you want to change it, it's simple. Just click on it, open your Iconify plugin again. Say I want to change to maybe this particular send icon. I can just click on this and then click on replace icon, and it automatically replace the icon. You can do that as many times as you want. It's going to replace the icon instead of creating a new one with the icon size and everything still like you've defined it. So I'm going to change the color back to our dark blue. I'm going to move it. So what I want to do is I want to put these three, the two ellipses and this send icon into a frame, so I can align them. So I'm just going to click Ctrl or G to put them into a frame. I'm going to name the frame send icon. So that's that. And then I'm going to rename this ellipsis. So this is the big. So I'm going to call this green circle. The second one I'm going to call gray circle. So like I said, this is optional, but it is highly recommended. Naming your layers, all of those things, they are optional, but they are highly recommended. So for this, I don't want this to be in another frame. So what I usually just do is bring it out of the frame it was, and I'm going to delete that frame. So we have just the icon over here. Then I can rename this to send icon. Then since this is now in a frame, I can now align it to mid and center of the frame, but that does not really work. So I'm just going to manually align it to where it visually looks good. But now we have a frame for the send icon, and we can move it as a group. So that actually makes sense. But if you look at this particular design, the send icon here has the light reflected on it too. But this is looking rather flat because we don't have that. So how do we achieve that? We are going to click on the send icon, and then we are going to add another fill. It's going to be a gradient fill, a linear gradient fill. The first node is going to be white. The second node, I'm going to make it transparent by giving a 0 opacity value. And we already have that. Sorry, we already have that effect here, and I'm going to change its direction since the light is coming from this particular direction. So I'm going to change that direction and maybe increase this a tad. If I do it dramatically, it's going to show that it's, but I just want to make it maybe 30. Let's do 30%. So that is now visually that is now visible, and we have that now. So the next thing we need to do is to design our icons, all of the icons that we'll be using in this particular design. So that is kind of simple too. You just need 2 ellipses, 2 circles with virtually the same principles of light and shadows and all of those things. And then we'll create one and duplicate and fill the frame. So let's just quickly do that. So I'm going to create an ellipse. I'm using the keyboard shortcut 0 to go to the ellipse 2, while confining the X and Y axis to make sure I'm drawing from the center. So that's the first circle. I'm going to increase its size a bit. Yeah, I think that's fine. And it's going to have this color, but I want it to stand out a bit from the background. So I'm going to increase the value to this kind of blue, so it does not just blend with the background. So, and if you look here, this has like a glassy texture, a glassy feel to it. It's not just a flat color design. So how do we achieve that effect? We can achieve it by using the background blur effect, not radial blur this time. So I think that's okay. Yeah. So I'm going to increase it a bit more. And I'm going to draw, or let me just duplicate this, remove the background blur effect, reduce it in size a bit, make it white. Is it white? I think it's more of a grayish color, not white per se. So I'm going to use a darker gray color. Yeah, so that's okay. So I think we missed a step. Let's add the ray of light to this particular circle, the one with the dark blue color, the dark blue, dark green color. So how do we do that? It's still the same thing. Add a gradient, a radial gradient fill, and to make this 0. So as you can see, it dramatically changes the icon, just makes it pop, makes it look good. So if I click on this and I remove this linear, so it's just flat, it's barely even showing away from the background, it's blending into the background, but adding that just makes it pop, makes it look better a lot. So that's that about that. And then I'm going to put these two into a frame, Control G to put them into a frame. I'm going to call it icon. Then for this, I want to put, for this second ellipse, I want to put the stroke too. So I'm going to add a stroke, a white stroke, make it 2 pixels thick, and I'm going to give it a gradient stroke, make this 0. Then I'm going to change the direction because our light is coming from this particular direction. So that's that. Let's check. I think we need to further change the color, make it pop more. So I think what we need to do to just make this a little better, what I did here is for the linear this thing, I made it 3 nodes. So I added a third node here, make it white, then give it 100% opacity. Yeah, so we have the ray of light at the top and at the bottom, but there's nothing in the middle. So I'm going to change this to 50% stop. So we have the light shining through this. It is reflecting on the end of the ellipse at this side too, but there's nothing in the middle. So let's see how it matches there. So that's that. So we have the same kind of effect here. Then maybe we can change the color, make it a little bit darker. So we can also just increase the brightness of the glare a bit, just change it to, let's say, 25% opacity. So that's that. We have that. The next thing we need to do is add our social media icons, just like we have here. So let's just add the LinkedIn icon here. So for that, I'm going to be using a plugin called Brand Fetch, which you can see right here. So you can use that to get SVG icons for a lot of brands in the world. So I'm going to use the Ctrl K keyboard to go to my plugin section again. Go to plugin and widget. I'm going to search for Brand Fetch. I already have it here, so I'm just going to click on it. And I'm going to search for LinkedIn. I'm going to click on LinkedIn. and make sure I'm choosing the SVG version of the symbol. So this is the one I want here. It's black and it is SVG. So I'm going to just drop it to my canvas. Then I can bring this into the frame, reduce it in size, drop it into my icon frame, reduce it in size a bit more, then maybe align it to the center of the frame. This is here. I'm going to call it LinkedIn icon. Just like I said, I like to name my layers, just like to be organized. So if you look from this particular design here, even the icons, they have the light reflected on them. So I'm going to do the same thing here. It's the same method we've been using since morning. I'm just going to click the LinkedIn logo. I'm going to add a gradient fill. This is going to be white, and this is going to be 0. The second stop is going to be 0. And I'm going to change the angle of the linear gradient so that the light is hitting it from this particular angle. So let's check the before after. It is flat. It is looking flat. If I turn it on, it has that light ray reflected on it. And I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to delete this because I don't need it. The symbol frame too, I'm going to delete it. So that's that. So our design is coming together fast. And to just do the remaining icon, I'm just going to duplicate this how many times? I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 icons. So I'm just going to duplicate this icon frame 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I'm going to put it into the circle. I did. I think I did more than I needed. Way more than I needed. So that's that. That's how you do that. And for me, I'm just going to change the icons in these frames. So yeah, let's say you want to do YouTube. Just bring up a brand fetch. Let me just do the ones I have here. You can search for them. I'm going to do Facebook first. Facebook does not have SVG logo on brand fetch, so I had to get that from just Google search Facebook logo SVG. You are going to get it. So let's do. We have LinkedIn already. Sorry. I'm going to go to WhatsApp. So I'm going to drop it here. So let's move. This is the WhatsApp icon. I'm going to bring it into the frame. Delete this. This is what I need. So bring it down here. Then I'm going to reduce it in size. So I'm going to change the color from green to black. Delete the existing LinkedIn logo from here. Or before deleting, what I can do is I can click on Ctrl-Alt-C to copy the style of that particular icon. Click on the WhatsApp logo, then click on Ctrl-Alt-V to paste the style. So let me show you what I just did. Let me track back a couple distance. So by clicking on Ctrl-Alt-C, what you are doing is you are copying the properties of that particular layer. For example, on this layer, we have a linear gradient, and then we have a dark fill, a black fill. So we have just copied those styles, and then we can now paste them on this particular icon. So let me hide the LinkedIn layer so you can see how this affects. If I click on Ctrl-Alt-V, oh, we already have the same thing here. I'm just going to, let me remove this so you can see it again. So I'm going to click on Ctrl-Alt-V, and then it automatically pastes that particular layer style on that icon. So I'm going to delete the existing LinkedIn logo for that. And that's the same thing I'm just going to do for the remaining icons. Just change the icon, paste the star and all those things. So I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to skip forward. Then after I've done all of the changes, we can resume the video. So I'm done with that. I've replaced the icons from the LinkedIn original icons to the icons of different social media platforms that I want to represent in the animation. So something I also did was increase the opacity of the linear fill from 20 to 25% just to give it a little bit more pop. So the next thing I want to do now is just to rename all of my layers, all of these icon layers. So I'm just going to skip. I won't bore you with that. So I've renamed all of my icon layers, but this ray is sitting below some of the icon layers. So I'm going to move it above them so the light can shine on those layers. You can see the different mix. So the light is now reflecting on the layers instead of being beneath the layers and the light being below the layers. So let me turn it off and on to see the different mix. I think I might reduce the opacity of this a bit, the way tiny. Just maybe reduce it to, let's say 11 or 12. 12 seems fine. So it's not overpowering. So that's good. The next thing we need to do is to draw our lines. The lines that connect the social media icons to the send button. And this is like pretty straightforward. For the vertical and horizontal lines, we can use the line tool for that. The shortcut for that is just L. And you can use this to just create your line. Before that, let me just align the send tool with this icon so they are on the same plane. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to do, yeah. So just going to do the same thing for this. Oh, that is perfect already. And then for this, I want them to be on the same plane too. This is optional, but I like my layers organized and all of those things. Yeah, that's perfect. And this will also help when we are duplicating some of the lines we create. So for these angular lines, we are just going to create one, and then we are going to duplicate for the rest of the icons. So let's just draw the horizontal and the vertical lines first, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to click on L for the line tool. Then while I'm drawing, I'm going to hold down Shift so I can draw on a straight axis. If I don't hold down Shift, I'll be able to move it up and down, but I want this to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to hold down Shift while drawing my line. And I'm going to leave it here. Then I'm going to make this, let's say 5 pixels. Maybe bring this down a bit. And I'm going to reduce its opacity to something like, I think 25%. Let's do 30%. So it's still there, you can see it, but it's not overpowering. So I want to duplicate this line, maybe bring it down to a couple of pixels. Then I'm going to duplicate this line to the other side. So you can do that by just holding down Alt and then drag. Then once you're dragging, you can click on Shift to still maintain the same axis. So this is short on this end. So I can increase it by clicking on Enter and then clicking on this node and then dragging it. If you drag it without holding down Shift again, you're going to move it up and down. But I want this to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to drag while holding down Shift. So that's that. Click on Enter again to exit the edit mode. So I'm going to do the same thing for the vertical lines. Make it 5 pixels. Then what value do you use? Okay, 30% opacity. Hold down Alt, Option while holding down Shift. So that's that. We are still going to move these lines below the icons so they are not showing like this, but I want to draw them all first and I can move everything at once. And I realize that the lines are even being drawn in some frames, so I want to move them out of those frames. They're not supposed to be in any frames, they're supposed to be out of the frames, just like that. So for the angular lines, what we can do is use the pen tool for that. I'm just going to change to the pen tool by clicking on P, and then I'm going to draw just 2 straight lines at first. Click again, then click like this. Then I'm going to click on escape to go out of edit mode. Then I'm going to zoom in a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Then click on the bend tool. This is the bend tool here. Then I'm going to click on this particular node, the center node, and click, hold, and drag. So I can make it a curve instead of a hard cut, a hard join. So that's that. Then I can click on enter to exit the edit mode. Then change this to white. Change this to white. The weight, change this to 5. Then reduce the opacity to 30. So that's that for that. If you don't like how the curve look, you can click on enter again, click on the node, and then just drag these lines to define how curved. The longer you make the line, the more curved the angle looks. The shorter it is, the more sharp it looks. So I'm going to increase it a bit. So it's just, that's that curve there. Then click on enter again to exit the edit mode. Zoom out, and that kind of looks good. That's good enough. If you have more time, you can refine it to just make it look perfect. But for now, I'm just going to move on to not waste a lot of time. So for this, instead of drawing the same line here, what we can do is just duplicate this. I'm going to bring it up here, make it line. So I can just hold Alt to duplicate it, bring it down. Then I can just click on right click and then flip vertical. So once I flip vertical, I can just use it for this particular icon too, and it works perfectly. So I'm just going to use the arrow key to nudge it to connect to that icon. So that works perfectly for that particular icon too, since they are on the same axis. That is why I had to align the icons. So for this particular size too, what we can do is just click on the 2 lines, hold down Alt, duplicate while holding Shift, move, and then we can flip this on the horizontal axis, and that works too. And then move this back a bit, and that's how you make all of your lines, and that's perfect. So what we can now do is rename these lines. Like I said, I like to rename my layers. So this is going to be Facebook line because it belongs to Facebook. This is going to be X line. So let's not forget to move them below the icon layers. So I'm going to move everything below the icon layers. So they are below the icon layers. So I think our design is basically ready at this point. Maybe we should increase, the ray is just more visible here. Let's increase the ray a bit. The visibility of the large ray. Let's increase it to, let's say, yep, I think that's fine. Yeah, we need to create our glow. So the next thing we need to do is, I think we should increase the width of the lines a bit. Let me see over here. I think we have, let me just check the dimension we use for this. So this is like 7 pixels. Let's increase the width of the lines to 7 pixels instead of 5. So you can just highlight everything, then increase to 7 pixels. So we want to duplicate these lines. We want to make them 2 copies for each social media platform. That's because we'll be using the line to, if we go back to our animation here, and I click on this, so that the glow is moving through these lines. So we need 2 copies to make this work, because the first copy is going to be the one that is visible. Then we are going to use the second copy to define where our glow will move through. Let me just show you what I mean. If you look at this particular line here, let me just lock this ray, so I'm not clicking on this. So we have this mask group, and we are using a second ray. This is the second ray here. We are using it to define. We are using it to define the part in which this our glow will move through. So we are using it as a mask. So we need a second. So if it's not going to be visible because it is a mask. So we need a second one that is going to be visible to make the animation make sense. So that is why we need 2 copies for each of the social media lines. And let's just duplicate. It's easy. We just have to duplicate all of the lines that we created already. So I'm going to click on all of them, highlight all of them, click on Ctrl D to duplicate them. Then I'm going to click on Ctrl R to rename everything at once. So I'm going to click on the current name and then matte. I'm going to call it matte instead of mask, because that will make sense when we are animating. In Lottie Creator, After Effects, all those animation softwares, we don't use mask per se. We use mask, but in different contexts. For what we are going to be doing, we are going to be using something called matte. So what I've just done is I've defined the name for all of these lines. So I'm going to use their current name plus space and then matte. Again, the shortcut to rename layers is Ctrl R. I'm going to click on rename, then I'm going to leave them as is. So we have 2 copies of each line now. So for all of the lines that are going to be our matte, I'm going to make sure they are on 100% opacity instead of 30%. So they are going to be 100% opacity. So the next thing we need to do is to create our glow. This particular glow that moves through the line, that's what we are going to be creating next. And to create them is like very simple. All you need is a circle, an ellipse, and we can do that by using the control. There's a keyboard shortcut O, and then we're just going to create a basic ellipse. Maybe reduce its size a bit, and then give it our light green color. Maybe make it pop, make it a lighter green. I think that would do. And then we are going to add the effect layer blur to it. Then make it something around that level. So I think that's fine. Maybe increase the size a bit. Then make it pop a little. Yep, that is perfect. So how do we now bring this line and make it come here and make it look like it is transited? So that is why we needed a second layer. So let me just do a quick example now. So for this particular, let's say we want to move this particular glow from the send button to the YouTube icon. We are going to move it through this our matte. This is our line matte. So let's just place this here. I'm going to bring it above the YouTube line matte. This is the YouTube line matte. I'm going to click on the 2. Oh, sorry, I need to bring this below the line matte. No, sorry. Since we are going to be using this as the mask, this is what will be below. I'm going to click on the 2, right click and click on use as mask. And as you can see, we are now using the line matte, this particular layer, to define the visibility of our glow. And we can now move the glow. If I move this, it's going to look like we are moving the glow inside. I'm using keyboard, the arrow keys on the keyboard to move this now with shifts. I'm using shifts and then up and down to move this. So that is how we get this effect of the glow moving through the social media lines. So that is the same concept we'll be using in Lottie Creator when we are creating our animation. We have glow for each social media icon, then we have mats for those glows, then we will move the glow through those mats. But if we don't have a second line layer, this is just what we are going to have. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake there. I'm supposed to move the glow, not the line. This is what we are going to have, a glow that is moving, but we are not seeing the part in which the glow is moving. That is why we needed a second layer that will act like our guide. Our guide layer that will show where the part in which the glow is moving through. So that's how we do that. So I'm just going to remove this mask, then bring out these layers out of the mask group, so we can go back to what we had. Then I'm going to rename this glow. Then I'm going to duplicate it for all of the layers, all of the social media layers. I'm going to bring it here actually. So what I want to do is, I don't want it to be inside. Let me just lock all of these frames so they don't interfere with what we are doing. I'm going to lock them. Yeah. So this is the send icon. I'm just going to hide that so I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to use Alt to duplicate for each social media icon, the glow for each social media icon. Yeah, so let's bring back then I'm going to rename them. Like, I just like to rename my layers. So this is going to be Facebook glow, then show. So all of our glows are hidden beneath this our send button. Then in animation, what we are going to do is just move them through their marks to their respective social media icons. And just like that, our design is ready. But there's something we need to do, because if you remember, we are using a mask for this particular grid here to get this fade out effect, which is fine in Figma, but we are going to be animating in Lottie Creator, and Lottie Creator does not support mask per se. What we are going to use in Lottie Creator is going to be called a matte instead of a mask. It's still the same concept. They are basically the same concept, but they are called different things. They do basically the same thing, but they are called different things in the different softwares. In Figma, if you want to do this effect, you use a mask. In Lottie Creator, we can basically use something called a matte. The next thing we need to do to prepare this design for animation in Lottie Creator is to convert this grid to a PNG image. This is important because animation softwares like Lottie Creator, After Effects, they kind of struggle with this kind of layers with a lot of vertices. So this is a vector layer, it has a lot of vertices, and they struggle a lot with it. I've tried doing similar thing in After Effects even, and it's going to be very, very laggy and all of those things. So to avoid that kind of issue, what we can do is to convert our grid into a PNG image, and then we need to remove the mask. And then when we get to Lottie Creator or After Effects, whatever the case may be, we can now recreate the mask. So how do we convert this to a grid? It is very simple in Figma. What you can do is just right click on it and then copy as PNG, click on the frame, and then you paste it inside the frame. I'm going to bring it down. So let's call this BG quickly. Quick rename. This is it. I'm going to call it grid. It's now a PNG, and I'm going to hide the former one. Before we hide, let's just make sure this is aligned. And I'm going to raise it up and reduce its opacity. I think what we had here was 25%. Reduce its opacity to okay, let's just leave it as is. Once we get to Lottie Creator, we will reduce the opacity. Then I'm going to hide this from view, the original grid. So when we get to Lottie Creator, we will recreate that fading out effect. So that's that for the design stage. Our design is now ready and properly prepped for animation. The next phase is just to move to Lottie Creator, quickly do our animation, and then we can use the State Machines AI to do our interactivity. So let's export this particular design for animation. To do that, we are going to click on the frame. You can click on it here or click on the name on the canvas, and then you go to export. Then you export as SVG. So you need to click on this hamburger menu too, and then make sure you click on include ID attributes. That will make sure it's using the names of the layers. Else, all of the renaming you've done is just going to go to waste. You are going to have a bunch of layer 1, layer 2, layer 2 that don't make sense. So make sure you click on include ID attributes here. And then we want to not outline texts. So what we want to do is we want to have texts with the original text properties, like the font size, the text content, and a lot of those things. So we can dynamically change them later in the animation, just like we have in this place where we can change our text. So let me reset the override. So we can change the text and everything in the final version of the animation. So if you want to export your SVG from Figma, make sure you do not have the outline text selected, or else it's just going to convert this text, any text in your particular frame, into a set of vectors, which we don't want in this particular case. Sometimes you want that, but for this particular animation, we do not want that. So make sure you have include ID attributes selected and outline text deselected. So once we are done with that, we're going to close this tab, and then we are going to click on export this particular frame, which name is Bento Animation. Then I'm going to save it on my, choose a folder, because I already have a folder created for this. I'm going to save it in this particular folder. And that's all we have to do in Figma. So let's move to Lottie Creator to do our animation and interactivity. Open a Chrome tab and log on to creator.lottiefiles.com. Once you are here, if you don't have a LottieFiles account, you have to create one and log in. I already have an account, so I'm just going to log in. So I'm logged in. The first thing I need to do is to prep my workspace for animation. I'm going to give it a name first. And then I'm going to define the canvas size. If you remember from our Figma file, our canvas size, our frame size is 1080 by 1080 pixel. So I'm going to do the same thing here. To change your canvas size in Lottie Creator, you can just select one of the presets. I have 1080 by 1080 here, so I'm just going to select that. Or you can manually just type in whatever you want for the X and Y axis. That's the width and the height of the canvas. But I already have 1080 by 1080, so I'm just going to leave it as this. So it has changed that. To fix the canvas to view, I'm just going to click on Ctrl 0. So the next thing we need to do is to set our time and then our frame rate for the animation. So for time, the duration, I'm going to change this to 10 seconds. It is better to have more time than to have less time. So I'm going to, I envisage that this animation should not be more than 10 seconds. So I'm just going to leave it as 10 seconds and at 30 FPS. So once that is done, the next thing we need to do is to import our SVG. The SVG we exported from Figma, we are going to import it into Lottie Creator, and then we are going to prepare it for animation. To do that, you can either come to this particular icon here, click on it, and then upload assets, or you can simply just drag and drop your SVG into the Lottie Creator canvas, and it will automatically import and load the SVG into the timeline. So that's what I'm just going to do. I'm going to search for the SVG on my computer and then drag and drop it into my canvas. Yep, so we are here. But if you notice, we've lost the naming convention for all of our layers. That's like a bummer, but we can quickly get all of them back by just ungrouping some of our layers here. So the first thing I want to do is just to name this. I think this is the background layer, so I'm just going to name this background layer. And to change the name in Lottie Creator, you don't double click, you click on enter. It's just the same thing like After Effects. Just click on enter and name this BG, and then I'm going to lock this. So I'm just going to find whatever these layers and then I'm going to rename them. So I think this is our tiny ray. I'm just going to click on this and name this tiny ray, and this should be our large ray. Yeah, this is our large ray, this is our tiny ray. So I'm just going to rename this to large ray. So these are all of our icons, the social media icons, the send button icon. I'm just going to open this And as you can see, I still kind of have all of them here, but they are grouped under the same thing. So what I want to do is here is to ungroup them. So I'm just going to click this. The first frame, I'm going to ungroup. Yeah, so I have all of them here. Then I'm going to click these two, and then I'm going to ungroup. So it's ungrouped. We have all of the individual icons here, just like I like, with the names. And this is the send icon. So for the send icon, I would like to kind of ungroup these two because I'm going to be using it as an individual layer. I'm going to ungroup it, then I'm going to make it a nested layer in Lottie Creator. So let me just show you what I mean by that. I'm going to ungroup this. Ungroup this. So we have the three layers that make up this thing, but the send icon is now beneath this. So I'm going to move this up above the two circles. So we have, this is the icon, this is the gray circle, this is the large green circle. So I'm going to click on the three, right click, and then make them a scene, create a scene out of them. So this is going to be called send button. So what I've just done is to put this into a nest. If you use After Effects, you understand what a nest is. If you don't, a nest or a scene, as it is called in Lottie Creator, is just a group of layers that is also an animation composition on its own. So that's that. I want to click on this and make sure I fit the bounding box to the object. So this was how the bounding box was. It spanned the entire composition, the 1080 by 1080 composition, but I'm going to fit it to the object. Then I'm going to make sure my anchor point is in the middle. So let's move on. This is our glow. Let's just hide this so we can see our glow. So this is the individual glows. So I think I should have the names here. Oh, the names are not there, so I'm just going to rename them. So this is the Facebook glow. I'm going to name it Facebook glow. IG glow. I'm going to quickly rename this, not to bore you. Then once I'm done, we can continue. So I've renamed the glow. The next thing I want to do is to move the anchor points of the individual glows to the middle of the layer. So as you can see, if I click on this, I'm currently selecting this Facebook glow, but the anchor point is at the top left corner of the canvas. So what I can do is just to click on Y to choose the pan behind tool. It is called move anchor tool. Sorry, I use a lot of terminologies from After Effects. I'm from an After Effects background. So it is called move anchor point tool in Lottie Creator, but the shortcut is still Y. I'm going to click on it, Y. I'm going to move this a bit, just a bit, a tiny bit. Then I'm going to click on this particular shortcut to move it to the center of that particular element. So as you can see, it has moved to the center of that glow. I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the glow. Use the pan behind tool to move it a bit, then click on center to center the anchor point. So that is done. I'm going to change my tool back to the move tool from the move anchor point tool. And then this is the next layer that we don't know what it is, but I think it's the layer of all of our lines grouped together. So we can hide and unhide it, so I'm right. So what we can do is just to toil this down, open the group itself. We have all of our lines properly named, so we can just ungroup this. Ungroup, choose this, and then ungroup again. So we have all of our individual lines with our mat. So for the image, I'm going to rename it to grid. I like to have all of my layers properly named. And we have 3 text layers here instead of 2 that we imported from Figma. So this is going to be the title. I'm going to call this title. Then I'm going to make this the subtitle. We have an extra layer here. I'm going to copy its content, then add it to the layer of the subtitle. So I'm just going to come here, click on Shift Enter, and I'm going to paste. Then once that is done, I can now delete the extra layer. So we have everything, all of the text layer in a single text layer, all of our text in a single text layer, so to speak. So that's that. And this, I think this is medium, if I'm right. It's supposed to be medium, yes. And this is semi-bold. Yeah, so let me change the text content. So you can change this to whatever you want. So that is what I've just changed this to. The subtitle too, you can change it to whatever you want. So the next thing we need to do is to create the gradual fade out of our grid layer. So let's first reduce its opacity to 25%, just like we had on Figma. I think we need to increase it a bit. Let's do 35%. I think that's cool. So we need to create this effect here. Let's go to Figma. This gradual fade out effect. So how do we do that in Lottie Creator? This took me a while to figure out, but you can easily do the same thing. Just use the same principle, just like we did in Figma. We are going to create a rectangle. Go to the rectangle tool, rectangle creation tool, by clicking on this icon or using the shortcut Alt-R. I'm just going to click on this and then create my rectangle from here. From this angle. So once that is ready, I'm going to align it to the center. I'm going to name it matte, grid matte. Then I'm going to move it above. These organization steps are not entirely compulsory. You can do your animation without it, but I just love my layers and everything to be organized. So we have our grid matte on top of the layer of the grid. So the next thing we need to do is just to use the same principle we used in Figma. I'm going to create a gradient fill. I'm going to make it a radial gradient. So for the first node is going to be white. Color does not matter when we are using any layer as a matte or a mask. In Figma it's called mask. In Lottie Creator it's going to be a matte. Color does not matter. What we are interested in is the opacity value, the transparency or the opacity value. So for the first one, it is going to be 100. The second node is going to be 100, but the last node, the final one, the outermost one, we are going to reduce it to 0. So we have the same gradual fade out effect. So once we've done that, the next thing we need to do is to click on our grid. This is it here. And on the timeline, we are going to use that grid matte as our matte. So I'm going to click on this icon here and then find the grid matte. This is it here. Then use it as our matte. As you can see, we have the same effect where the grid gradually fades out. And we can adjust the degree of this fading out by adjusting the radial gradient of our matte. So if I bring this in, it's just going to be reduced because we have reduced the length of the radial gradient. But if I extend this out, we are going to have that. So I'm going to leave it towards the end here so we can have the same gradual fade out effect. So let's check it out. So we have the same thing over here. So the next thing we need to do is let's just bring back our send button. So that's our send button. The next thing we need to do is assign our glows their individual matte. So for example, the Facebook glow, we are going to click on it, click on matte, and then assign it the Facebook line matte. Where is it? So that's that. And now that we've assigned it matte, we can move the glow through that particular matte. So that's what we are going to do for animation. We are going to keyframe this movement from here to here. But when we get to animation, let me just quickly do the same thing for all the other glows. So I'm going to click on IG glow, assign it the IG glow matte, IG line matte. As you can see, this makes it easy for us to easily select their corresponding matte. Imagine if we had what we had was line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. It would be hell difficult to really identify which globe belongs to which mat. But now that we've renamed the layer, we can easily just find their corresponding mat and select that. So for the threads, we are going to look for threads line mat, and that's that. LinkedIn, the same thing. So that's done. We can now finally begin our animation. And this is like where the real fun part begins. I want to quickly rename this nested scene. I don't like how it's saying nested scene. So I'm going to come to assets, click on this and rename it to send button, and go back to outliner. So let's check out this animation. So we have, the first thing we need to do is to animate this pulsing behavior. This send button increasing and decreasing in size, and then we have the light ray animating here too. So those are the first set of animations we need to tackle, and this is like quite simple. All we have to do is just to find what we are animating here. What is animating here is the scale property of the send button. So we just have to do the animation. Then for the light ray, what we are animating is the opacity, and that's its visibility. So if you look at it closely, it increases in opacity and then reduces. It increases and reduces. The same thing for the send button, but the property that is animating here is the scale. So we are just going to find the send button. This is it right here. And then we are going to click on S to bring out the scale property to start animating it. So then I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Shift and function key all together. Then click on down arrow twice to move my playhead 20 frames. So you can easily just use the playhead to move it like this, then drop it on 20 frames. But I like using keyboard shortcuts a lot because they make the workflow that much faster. So I'm just going to move this 20 frames. Then I'm going to add another keyframe at 100. Then I'm going to go back to the middle, that's 10 frames. Then increase this to, let's say 105. Let's see how that looks. So we need to make sure we turn on the constraint property. So we want to make sure we are increasing on both the X and Y axis, not just the X axis. That's why I turn on constraint property here. Just click on this icon, and I'm going to move this to 105. Let's see how that looks like. I'm going to come to the 30th frame, that's the 1 second mark, then click on N to define a work area because I want to see what this will look like in a loop. So I'm going to click on play. So I think that's cool, but it's kind of fast. So I want to maybe reduce this to 50 frames. Let's see. So I like that. It's not just the loop is not very fast. The button animates and then it rests a bit. So it gives the users room to observe what is happening. It's not just going like heartbeat. It animates and then it rests a bit. But these are linear keyframes, which is kind of good in some cases. But in this particular case, I want it to be an easy keyframe. So what I can do is just to select the 3 keyframes and then go to my graph editor. Click on scale. Click on scale here too. Then go to the speed graph. I like using the speed graph for animation. And then click on easy ease. Then what I can do is, let's play this again and see what it looks like. So I like that it's working like I want. So I'm going to X out of the graph editor. So the next thing I want to do is create a segment out of this defined limit of the animation. So from 0 to 50, the 50th frame, I want to make that a segment. So how do we do that? I'm going to click on the segment icon over here, then click on add segment. It automatically adds segments. I'm going to change this to 50, not 51, 50th frame. Then I'm going to give it the name I do segment. So the reason why I did that is because once we finally get to interactivity, we are going to be using our segments to define how our interactivity is going to be. If you don't understand this, I've created a full video on LottieFiles State Machine, how interactivity works with Lottie Creator. You can check that to brush up on the fundamental knowledge of how state machines in Lottie Creator works. And you can, if you watch that video, I'm going to link it in the comments description of this particular video. You understand more what we are doing with segments in this particular video. But the basics of segments is just defining the part of your animation that you are going to use for interactivity, or you are going to play at different times. So we've defined this segment as the idle segment. This is what we always loop. So the next thing we want to do is to create another segment of animation for when the button is clicked. So let's move back to our finished animation here. So we have this segment looping. Oh, we need to create the animation for the light ray too. So let's quickly do that. For the light ray, I'm going to use just the tiny ray. I'm going to move my player to the beginning of the animation too. Then click on T to start animating the opacity. So that's the keyboard shortcut to animate the opacity of any layer in your Lottie Creator project. So I'm going to move this 20 frames to click on this button to add another icon, go back 10 frames, and then maybe increase the opacity a bit over here. Let's use this instead. So let's increase the opacity of the stroke. Sorry, the fill. The opacity of the fill and not the opacity of the layer itself. So that is on 16 right now. So I'm going to move 20 frames. I'm going to add another keyframe. Then go back 10 frames. Then maybe increase this a bit to 25 frames. Then I'm going to make it easy ease too. So to make this easy ease, I'm going to select the keyframes and then click on smooth for the in and smooth for the out. And that's how we have that light ray increase and decrease. But I think it's a bit too much. I don't like it's 25 is a little too much for me. So I'm going to reduce to something like 20. So this is optional. If you don't want the light ray to pause, like if you don't want it to do that pulsing animation, you can just omit this part, remove this part. But I'm following the example we have here, so that's why I did this animation to show you how to do it too. So something else I did is just to move these keyframes a bit in time, so they are not just moving in tandem with the animation. So there's a little bit of delay between the animation of the button and the pulsing, the light ray pulsing animation. So we are going to leave this. So the next thing we need to do is just to do the animation for when the button is clicked. So we are going to define another segment by I'm using the B and the end button to define the beginning and the ending of a segment. So for this, from frame 51 is where I want to start the segment for where the button is actually clicked. So I'm going to click on B to create that, then move a couple of frames out. Again, I'm using the keyboard shortcut Shift plus N, then arrow keys to move in an increment of 10 frames. So down button, I'm holding down Shift and the function key, then down arrow key to move a couple of frames. Then I'm going to click on N to define that area. So this is the area where I want the thing that will happen when the button is clicked to happen. So let's just see what happens when the button is clicked. When the button is actually clicked, we have this click animation that shows that the button has been clicked. So that this particular thing that goes down. So let's create that. So I'm going to go back to the send button. I'm going to add a keyframe here. Then move 20 frames again. Add another keyframe there. Go back 10 frames and then bring it down a bit. Let's say to 95%. So this is what we have, the button going down, just like when somebody presses it. But it's kind of slow. I want it to be faster. It's like super slow. So what I can do is just to reduce the length of the animation from, say, these 20 frames to 10 frames. So I'm going to move back to the 10th frame, then select the three keyframes while holding down Shift. I'm going to move this third one to where my playhead is. So I've essentially reduced the time of that particular animation from 20 frames to 10 frames. You hold down Shift and then you move the last of the first keyframe to wherever you want it to be. Then I want to change this from the linear keyframes to easy ease. So this is simple to just open my graph editor, go to speed. I use speed graph. I'm going to select just these three, make them easy ease. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so that feels more, it feels more tactical, like a button press. It's faster, it's immediate. So that's good for me. So the next thing we need to do is just to do the glows moving from the center of the button to their individual social media icons. So once somebody clicks the button, the glows, this click happen, and once it reaches this stage, the glows move through their particular mat to the individual social media icon. So I'm going to just click on all of the glows. I've highlighted all of them. Let me move this a bit so I can see more. You can move your timeline up and down by just highlighting the top of the timeline, clicking and holding down the left click, and then moving up and down. So I'm going to move up a bit, and to make this fit the new canvas, to make the scene fit the new canvas, I'm going to click on Ctrl O. Then I'm going to select the glows again, select all of them, and I'm going to, what we want to animate is their position, because we want to move them from their individual position currently to each social media icon. So for example, the Facebook glow, we want to move it from this position to the Facebook icon position. So that is basically what we'll be doing here. So I'm going to select all of them and then click on P to start animating the position. Then I'm going to click on individual glow now. I'm going to move 20 frames, 1, 2, to move 20 frames. And for the Facebook glow, and then I'm going to move it down to the Facebook icon. But if you look closely, we are moving on a straight line. And if I play this back, it's not going to go through that particular curve that we've defined for its path. This is supposed to be its path, but since we are moving it on a straight line, it's not going to go through that path. So what we can do is just to edit the motion path for this particular animation. And how do we do that? So what we can do is go to the first frame, click on it, click on that particular keyframe. So these are the icons for the keyframe. This is the icon for the second keyframe. This is the icon for the first keyframe. I'm going to click on this particular icon, then go to the right part of the Lottie Creator UI, change the vertex type to mirrored, and then we are going to have this undo pop up. So if I change it back to linear, we are not going to have any undo. If I change this to mirrored, we're going to have this undo pop up. Then I'm going to do the same thing for this two. Change it to, first change it back to linear, then change it back to mirrored. Then now I can now move this undo to change the motion path. So if I click on these two, I can move these two to change the motion path. And now our glow is going to move through that segment that we've defined for it. So let's see what that looks like from when the button is clicked. So let's zoom out, Ctrl 0, then play that particular section. So that makes sense a lot. It looks nice. And what I can do is, I think it's too fast, so I'm going to increase it from 20 frames to 1 second. That's 30 frames. Remember, we are using 30 FPS for our project. So from here, we have 30 FPS. So every 30 frame is a second. So that is why I've changed this from 20 frame to 30 frames. So they move in a second. But we are still using a linear keyframe here, which is not, it does not really look nice. It doesn't feel nice. So what I can do is just change this to another type of easing. I'm going to select the two keyframes, then go to my graph editor, go to speed. I use the speed graph just like I've said. Click on this to highlight them again, and I'm going to change this to easing fit all, so I can see all of that. Then what I can do is select this particular keyframe, move it to the right, select these two, and then move it to the right. So this particular curve will define the speed of the animation. So wherever this mountain is high, that place will be fast, and then the speed will gradually slow down. So from this particular side, it's going to be fast in the beginning, and then it will gradually slow down. But if you notice, doing that has messed up our motion part, so we need to kind of redo that. So it is advisable you do your easing first before you now go back to doing your motion part. So let's quickly redo our motion part. I'm going to click on this, change it to this, move this over here. Then I'm going to click on this too. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so that makes more sense. So we are transferring the energy from the send button. The send button going back up from 95% to 100, and we are transferring it, using it to accelerate the movement of the glow from the send button to here. So it just feels so much better. So these are some of the things you do to make your animation feel better. So that is just the same thing I'm going to do for the rest of the icons. For the ones that are straight, we don't need to do the motion part. We are just going to simply, let me just quickly do the one for IG glow, so you can see this. I'm going to move 1 second, that's 30 frames, and then I'm going to move this from this particular angle. I can just hold down shift and move it here. So what I can do, instead of doing my easing manually again, I can just highlight these two, then click on copy easing on the graph editor, highlight the new two keyframes, and then click on paste easing. So it will automatically do that same what's it called, that same easing for us, instead of us having to do it manually. Let's just see that. Yeah, so we have the same thing. So I'm just going to quickly do the same thing for the rest of the social media icons, and I'm going to skip that part so not to waste your time and bore you out. So I've done the same thing for all of the social media icons, and this is what it looks like. And if you want to preview this particular animation in real time, how it's going to look on web and mobile platforms, we are going to use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl P. So this is how the animation is going to really look like. This preview is kind of slow because it's just for preview, but this is the final version. This is what it's going to look like. So as you can see, it's kind of sluggish here. That's because there's a lot going on. But if you want to see the final preview of your animation, what it's going to look on web and mobile platforms in Lottie Creator, you can use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl P for that. And that's that for the animation. Animation is done. The next thing we need to do is just to make this interactive. Make it so that people can actually click on the send button, and then it's going to send the glow to all of the social media icons. So this timeline is a little long, so we are not using more than 3, so I'm going to shorten it to 4 seconds. We have 10 seconds, so I'm going to click out and change this to 4 seconds. Oh, a final step before we move into interactivity, we need to make this text editable in post. If we export it like this, this particular content of the text will be baked in. We will not be able to change them. So we need to turn them into something called motion tokens so that we are able to change them in post. For example, if we come here, you see the motion tokens tab here, and then this is where we can change them. But if you don't do this particular step, nothing is going to be populated in this tab. We are not going to change the text after we export the animation. So how do you create motion tokens in Lottie Creator? Just click on your text icon and then find the text tab on the interface. Click on this particular hamburger menu here and click on apply token. Create a new token. I'm going to call it, you can call it anything you want, but you can't have space in between the names. So I'm going to call this Bento Title, and I'm going to save. Then I'm going to call this Bento Subtitle. Create a new token. And I'm going to save. To see all of your motion tokens, you can click on this particular icon here, motion tokens, and you're able to see it here. So I want to rename this. I think I made a mistake with the name. Sorry, I'm kind of particular about my naming convention and everything. And one of the reasons why I do this is because if you are working on a large project, you are not most likely the only person that will be working on this. Somebody might be working on the illustration, the design. You are working on animation. Another person was working on interactivity. So you want to make sure all of your layers, the naming convention, the organization, everything is intact. So there will be a very smooth handover process throughout the whole animation process. So once we've created our motion tokens, we can now start adding interactivity to this particular animation. And we are going to be using the State Machines AI for that. So it's kind of straightforward, easy. So how do you do that? You click on the State Machine icon here to move into State Machine. And I'm going to just tell the State Machine AI what I want. So we've created 2 segments here. Oh, we did not create the second segment. Sorry. I think we omitted that. We've already defined the segment, but we need to let the Lottie Creator application know that this is our second segment. This is what we want to happen when somebody actually clicks the send button. So we omitted that part. I'm just going to click on segment and then click on add new segment. I'm going to call it button clicked. So that's that, and then I'm going to quickly return back to the State Machines tab. So this is where you see all of your segments here for your animation. We have the idle and we have the button click. So let's just quickly use the State Machine AI to add interactivity to our animation. So I'm going to click on the State Machine AI here, and I'm going to just tell you what I want. So for me, I'm just going to say create a state machine that loops my segment. I'm going to put this in quotes so it actually knows I'm referencing a segment. That's the idle segment. Until a user clicks I'm going to put the name of that in quotes too. Send button layer. So this is not arbitrary. I'm not just bringing this up. If we go back to the animate tab, this is what I'm referencing. This is the send button. Once somebody clicks on this, that is what I'm referencing in State Machine. So I'm going to paste this back. I'm putting it in quotes so you can know, State Machine AI can know what I'm really referencing. Once the send button layer is clicked, play the button clicked segment once and then move back to the looped idle segment. So what I've just told you to do is just to create a state machine that will loop this idle segment continuously until somebody actually clicks on this send button. Then it's going to play the animation of the glow moving through this particular social media lines to the social media icons once, then it moves back to the idle loop, just like we have here. So if I click on it, it plays this segment once and then it goes back to that particular loop and then it waits for another click. So that is what I've just instructed the state machines AI to do here. So let's just send this and see what it works out. So it will just create the state machine and then give you a summary of what it has created. So let's just test that out. I'm going to click on play here. And then as you can see, it's looping our send button. And if I click on the button, that plays, but it's not actually going back to the loop. So we can just update state machines that. So I've just told it that it doesn't go back to the loop once the send button is clicked and the button click segment is played. So let's see how that works out. Yeah, so it's now working as we intend. So it says fixed. I see the issue. The click state is missing the transition back to idle, and then it fixes that. So that's how easy it is to add interactivity to your animation using the state machines AI. So this is now working just like we expect. I'm going to reduce this a bit so we can just see. So finally, our animation is ready. Now we can export this as .lottie and you can embed it in your website, Figma website, Webflow website, on your WordPress website. You can embed it in your apps, on a lot of platforms. Let me just show you how to export and then embed it in all of your platforms. So to export, you just need to click on the export button over here. And you are going to choose a location for your animation. So I already have the location where I want it to be over here. So I'm just going to click on export. And it has finished exporting, and the size of this animation with its interactivity, with how dynamic it is and everything is 182 kilobytes, which is amazing. And then from here, you can download this animation in different formats: animated SVG, GIF, MP4, MOV, WebM, TGS, and Google Ads. But you should note that if you want this interactivity to work and all of those things, the interactivity, being able to change the text dynamically after it is exported, you have to use the .lottie format. So I can just download the .lottie animation here. It has downloaded to my workspace, as you can see, or I can open it in my workspace. I'm going to view in workspace. And this is what it looks like. Let me zoom it so you can see it properly. And I'm going to change. This is like too light for me. Just change the background. This does not affect the background of the animation. This is just for viewing. What I'm changing is just for viewing the animation in this particular space. And we have this loop that is going on, making sure the user knows this is an interactive element. And if I click on it, just send messages to all of the social media platforms, which is in tandem of the title and the subtitle of this particular animation. So from here, what we can do is just like we've done, we can download it and embed it in our app or website. Or From here, you can also now come to this particular tab, click on the motion token icon, and then if you want, you can change the title and the subtitle. So whatever change you make, even if you've embedded this on, say, on your app or your website, you can make these changes here, and they are going to automatically be made live in those platforms. You don't need to re-upload the animation there. If you are using the embed link, if you've embedded this, but if you download as a .lottie file, that is now detached from what is in your workspace. So if you want to download or you want to embed this, you can click on download icon here. Then you can download this as .lottie or optimize.lottie, or alternatively, you can come to the handoff tab, and then you can enable asset CDN. Then from here, you can click on this embed link, this asset link here, if you want to use this, say, in your app. But if you want to embed it, there's the embed link here, there's the embed URL, and there's the iframe code. So I recommend doing this way, because you can make changes in your workspace that will reflect on your app. If you download as a .lottie animation and then you embed it on your app or your website, if you make any change here, it's not going to reflect. But if you are using the embed link, whether the embed link or the assets link, any change you make in your workspace is going to reflect automatically in your app. Even if you change something, for example, if you come to Lottie Creator, and let's say we don't want this particular ray to animate anymore. Let's say we don't want the ray to animate anymore. I can simply just delete the keyframes of the ray. So we have just the button animating, and we don't have, what's it called, the ray animating anymore. If I export this now, it's going to say, do I want to save as new or I want to update? I can say I want to update it, and it's going to update it. Then I can view in my workspace. And as you can see, the ray is no more animating, but we still have the other things going on, just like they should. But the ray is no more animating. And if I go to the version history, click on this button over here, and you can see all of the 5 versions of the animation. So this is the one from 5 minutes ago. If I click on this, the ray is animating. That's the version with the animating ray. Let's toggle on. So this is the version with the animating ray. And if I click on this, this is the version without the animating ray. So this is one of the advantages of using the animation that is in your LottieFiles workspace. You can easily make changes that go live without you needing to edit the embed link or re-download the .lottie file and upload them on whatever platform you are using the animation in. So that's that for this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please, if you found value in this, it took me a lot of resource, effort, and time to put this together. So please like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever you can do to help support this particular video. Thanks.